A country at war, jihadist fighters controlling entire regions. Over 2 million people pushed from their homes, almost no money, sanctions from neighbors, cut off from old allies. Now, you would expect that country to be begging for help. You would expect its president to say, "We cannot build right now, the war comes first." But Ibrahim Traoré, a 36-year-old captain from one of the poorest nations on earth, looked at that situation and started building a new international airport, a national gold refinery, dams, solar plants, hospitals, agro-processing factories, a new bank. All of that happening in the same country at the same time during a war. So the question I want to answer today is simple. How is Traoré doing so much with so little? And more importantly, how does that tell us about the kind of system Africa needs? Now, let me give you the full picture first, because without this, nothing Traoré does makes any sense. Burkina Faso, West Africa, a landlocked country with no sea, limited oil, and one of the youngest populations in the world. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has been fighting an Islamist insurgency, armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS that came sweeping in from Mali. They attacked villages, took over territory, cut off supply routes to whole towns. Now, according to data from ACLED and Human Rights Watch, at least 20,000 people have been unalived since 2015. More than 2 million people have been pushed from their homes. Entire northern and eastern regions fell outside government control. Now, 2 presidents tried to handle this before Traoré came to power, and both of them were removed through military takeovers because the people had lost faith. Now, the war was getting worse and the state was crumbling under the weight of it. So by the time Captain Traoré came to power in September 2022, he was not inheriting a country in trouble. He was inheriting a country that was already burning. And here is what I find extraordinary. Most leaders in that situation will do one thing: fight the fire. They will say, development can wait. We have a war to win. Now, Traoré said the opposite. He said, if Burkina Faso stays poor and powerless, we will never win this war. So he decided to fight the war and build the country at the same time. But how and why is a country this poor even trying to do this? Stay with me, because the answer changes how you think about African leadership. So, who is Traoré? He's 36-year-old. He's a military captain. He trained as an artillery officer. And when he came to power, he was younger than most of your uncles. You see, his idea is simple. Burkina Faso has been independent since 1960. But according to Traoré, it was never truly free, because a country that cannot feed itself, power itself, or defend itself depends on others to survive. And when you depend on others, they control you. That dependence on France for security, on Western donors for money, on foreign companies for its own gold, is what Traoré calls the real enemy. You see, think of sovereignty like owning your own house. If you own your house, you make the rules, you decide who comes in. But if you are renting and you can't pay rent, the landlord decides everything. Traoré wants Burkina Faso to own its house. In January 2026, he stood up and presented what he calls the 2026 Feuille de route pour la souveraineté, what means in English the 2026 sovereignty roadmap. He told the nation 2026 is not a planning year, it's the year we make sovereignty irreversible. 3 goals: secure the territory, feed the people, build the economy, all at the same time. He also did something unusual. He renamed the Ministry of Defense into the Ministry of War. In his own words, they are not just defending, they are fighting to win. Now, here comes the part that makes the story truly interesting. To achieve all these goals simultaneously, he announced a wave of mega projects that would honestly be ambitious for a country with twice the resources in peacetime. Let's go through them. Now, let's talk about what Traore is building. Not what he promised, what's on the ground, what's in motion right now. Project 1, the International Airport. Ouagadougou's current airport is old, small, and cannot handle the traffic of a country trying to grow. Traore is pushing to complete the Donsin International Airport. Now, that project is estimated at $400 million. Why does it matter? Because a modern airport means trade, investment, tourism, and connection to the world. In a landlocked country without a proper international gateway, it's like a shop without a front door. Project 2, the National Gold Refinery and Mine Control. Burkina Faso is one of Africa's biggest gold producers, and for years foreign companies dug that gold out of Burkinabe soil, and the profits left the country. So Traore said, stop now. He has already built a gold refinery so that Burkina Faso process its own gold at home instead of exporting raw ore for others to refine. Now think of it like this: if you grow cocoa and sell the raw beans, you make little money. But if you grow chocolate, you make 10 times more. Traore wants Burkina to make the chocolate. Project 3, dams and energy. Burkina Faso has regular power cuts. Without electricity, factories don't run, hospitals struggle, students can't study at night. Traore is pushing the Ziga II dam project and multiple solar energy installations to give the country stable, affordable, locally produced power. Now, this is not luxury, it is survival infrastructure. Project 4, agro-processing factories. Burkina Faso grows tomatoes, cashews, cereals, but most of it is sold raw and processed elsewhere. Traore is building agro-processing plants, factories that turn raw food into finished products that can be sold for more. Now, this means more jobs for young Burkinabe, and most importantly, it means the country stops being a raw material exporter and starts being a producer. Project 5, expressways, hospitals, schools, and national banks. Traore is building an 8-way express lane between Bobo-Dioulasso and Ouagadougou. Now, most countries in Africa don't even have this kind of project, but Traore, with very little resources, is building it. This is a message to African presidents. He's also expanding vocational and technical schools because he believes the revolution needs engineers and technicians, not just soldiers. And he has set up a national postal bank to bring financial services to young people and farmers who have never had a bank account. Banks, hospitals, schools, expressways, these are not investments of a man who thinks he's losing. These are investments of a man who is planning to win. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, oh, this sounds great, but where is the money coming from? And how is a country in the middle of a war managing to do all this? You see, that's exactly the right question, and the answer to that is the most interesting part of this whole story. So, what is Traore's secret? How is he doing in 3 years what some African presidents couldn't do in 20? Now, I think there are 5 things working together. Let me break them down. Pillar 1, results first, politics later. In most democratic systems, a leader spends the first year campaigning, the second year fighting the opposition, the third year preparing for re-election. By the time they get around to actually building something, half the term is gone. Ibrahim Traoré does not have that problem. He's not running for anything. Every decision goes straight to execution. No year-long debates, no opposition blocking basic roads. Is that risky? Yes, but is it also fast? Pillar number 2, the power of a strong story. Now, Traoré understands something that most African leaders have forgotten. People do not just follow power, they follow meaning. You see, Traore has built a story, a national narrative, where every struggle is reframed as a step towards dignity and freedom. The war is not just about defeating jihadists, it's about proving that Africans can protect themselves. The factories are not just about jobs, they are about sovereignty. The goal is not just about economics, it's liberation. You see, that narrative gives people a reason to sacrifice. And when people are willing to sacrifice, you can move a country fast, very, very fast. Pillar 3. Getting the old strings. For decades, Burkina Faso, like many former French colonies, had to clear major decisions with Paris before executing in their own country. And that relationship came with money and security. But it also came with strings. Traore cut those strings. He expelled French troops, cancelled defense agreements. Then he pivoted to Russia and other known Western partners. Now, you can debate whether Russia is a better friend than France. That's a whole different video on its own. But what it gave Traore immediately was freedom to decide. And the deals he made with new partners came with fewer conditions attached. Pillar 4. Doing nuclear and thinking long term. Now, here is something that almost nobody in the mainstream media is talking about. Burkina Faso is in discussions with Russia's Rosatom, the same company building nuclear plants across Africa, about a nuclear energy project. See, I'm not saying that this is going to be built tomorrow, but I'm saying that a leader in war in a poor country who is thinking about nuclear energy is not thinking about next year. He is thinking about the next generation. Now, that's a different kind of leader that most Africans are used to seeing. Pillar 5. The soldier who sleeps in the bush. Now, there is one more thing that keeps people behind Traore, and it is not a project or a policy. It is the fact that he shows up, he visits troops at the front, he speaks directly to social media, he shows up to construction sites. People have seen leaders who live in palaces and talk about the poor. Traore, rightly or wrongly, does not give that permission. He is young, he's in fatigue. He says what he means in plain language, and in a region exhausted by corruption and empty speeches. That is electric. Now, one analyst described Ibrahim Traoré as arguably Africa's most popular, if not the favorite president right now. Not because he holds elections, but because he speaks the language that millions of Africans are feeling. But here is the uncomfortable question that we cannot avoid. Everything we just described, every single pillar, comes at a price. And we need to talk about that honestly. You see, I want to be honest with you because this channel is not about worship, it's about understanding. There are real criticism about Ibrahim Traoré that deserves to be on the table. Political parties have been dissolved or frozen under his government. Critics and journalists operate in a much tighter space than before. Human rights groups, including Human Rights Watch, have documented cases of abuse by government forces and allied militias, particularly in conflict zones. The war is not won. Jihadist groups still unalive people every month. The citizen cost is still very high. Now, these are all real things. They matter. Anyone building a picture about Ibrahim Traoré should not skip past them. But here is the other side of the scale. For 14 years before Traoré, Burkina Faso had elections, multiple presidents, international support, Western aid, democratic processes. And in those 15 years, the insurgencies grew, the poverty deepened, the state weakened. So when people say Traoré is not democratic, they are right. When we ask what democracy delivered for ordinary Burkinabe, the answer is complicated. If a system gives you roads but no elections, If a system gives you power but limits who can criticize it, if a system gives you dignity and security but does not look like Western democracy, is it always wrong? You see, I'm not telling you what to think. That's your job. But I will say this. Africa has been told for decades that the only legitimate system is the one designed in Europe. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to ask whether that system was designed with Africa in mind. And this right here is why the story is not just about Burkina Faso. It's a mirror that every African country needs to look into. Now, before I close, I need to bring in someone whose story echoes very loudly right now. Muammar Gaddafi, Libya. You see, when Gaddafi was alive, Western media mostly called him a dictator and a threat. When he failed when he was unalived in 2011, many Africans started to look closely at what he had actually built. Free healthcare for Libyans, near-free housing, interest-free loans for young people who wanted to start businesses, one of the largest engineering projects of human history, bringing water to millions in the desert. He also pushed hard for African monetary fund, an African central bank and a gold-backed African currency that would break dependence on the dollar and the French franc. You see, he did not get to finish it because he did not survive long enough. Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso, this same very country, in just 4 years in the 1980s, he built schools, vaccinated millions of children, planted trees to stop desertification, banned luxury cars for government officials, and tried to free Burkina from debt. He was unalived in 1987, and for years after, the world barely remembered him. Now every young African knows his name. You see, there is a pattern here. Africa tends to appreciate its builders after they are gone. Only after the construction stops, only after the lights go out, only after the country goes backwards. Then we say he was not perfect, but look at what he built. Now, Traore has read the story. He knows it. He's racing against it. Now, young people in Kenya, Nigeria, Cameroon, Senegal, Ghana, they are watching Traore not because they all agree everything he does, but because he makes them ask a question that their own leaders have not been able to answer. Why are we so rich in resources and so poor in outcomes? Nigeria has oil, DRC has coltan, gold, diamonds, Angola has oil, Zambia has copper, South Africa has almost everything, and yet these countries are still fighting for basic power, clean water, functional hospitals. Meanwhile, a small landlocked, war-torn country with almost none of those advantages is building airports, dams, refineries, and solar plants simultaneously. So the question is not really about Traore. The question is about systems. China did not come to the world's second largest economy by copying the West. It built a system that fits its own needs, one that rewards performance, not just politics. Rwanda is not built from genocide by waiting for perfect Western-style institutions. It used a disciplined, result-driven state to deliver some of the best development numbers in Africa. And Burkina Faso under Traore is asking the same question out loud. What if Africa stopped copying and started designing? Not a dictatorship, not chaos, but a system that rewards whoever delivers, not just leaders who talk or leaders who last. So, Traore may not be perfect. No leader is. The war in Burkina Faso is not over. The risks are very real. But what he has shown in 3 years, in one of the hardest situations any leader on this continent has faced, is that it is possible to build and fight at the same time. And if a small poor country at war can do that, what exactly is the excuse of bigger, richer African nations who are doing less with more? Maybe the real battle for Africa now is not on the battlefield. It is in the mind against systems, habits, and dependencies that were never built to serve us. That is what this series, The Strategic Lens, is all about. We will keep asking the questions that matter, and we will keep going where the real answers are. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, do you think Africa needs a new kind of political system? I read every reply. The next episode, we will go deeper into the coup attempt that tried to end all of this and how it made Ibrahim Traoré stronger. My name is Luis. You are watching Africa Today, and this is The Strategic Lens. See you in my next video. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. If you haven't joined our membership, our Patreon, I don't know what you're waiting for. With that in mind, I want to say thank you to all those who are supporting this channel. You are the reason why this channel exists. See you in my next video. Bye.